When does a child stop being a child? When they can no longer go to the store to buy candy and a drink? Or when we can no longer give them just 5 seconds to think? Is the essence of a child lost to us now? When do they pick up the pen and put down the crown? Is life so short it can never begin? And can man actually calculate the transition within? When does the transition from boy to man, girl to woman become a sin? Does manhood begin when he dodges bullets at home, yet still plays dodgeball at school? Or is she a woman when she is sexually assaulted while attending elementary class on Zoom? How does one lose her childhood so easy in this country? But when she protects herself because we didn't, all of a sudden she becomes a hussy. When he feels he has no other choice but to carry a weapon, when is it that we do a deep dive introspection? I heard that boys were made of snips and snails and puppy dog tails, and girls were made of sugar and spice and everything nice. But in reality, in our world, when the clock stops and time stands still, none of that matters because he will be forever 17 until. When it comes to juveniles, Tennessee has one of the harshest punishments in the country by sentencing children to a mandatory 60-year life sentence with eligibility for relief only after serving 51 years.
In 1999, at the age of 17, my brother Quinton Sanders received his sentence for an unintentional fatal car crash. Community Defense of East Tennessee and many others have been supporting his effort to release.
Through an amicus brief argued through the Knoxville Public Defender's Office, the Tennessee Supreme Court is currently considering whether a 51-year sentence for children is unconstitutional.
We're all deserving of redemption and a second chance. And when we take a child who we probably already failed, right? As a society, we've already failed this child. And then we say, we don't think you're redeemable. We don't think you're worth saving. Instead, we think the best alternative for you is for us to lock you away from your family, from your community, from everyone that may know you, love you, respect you, give you any kind of support, and throw you away, make you a number, and put you far away.
I'm very sorry for what happened today. Due to my actions that caused someone to lose their life, I did something to one person as well as to his family and friends. I know I put a hurt on my family as well. You know, I had an impact. I pray every day. I ask for their family for forgiveness.
I asked for forgiveness when he got convicted. I did told the family, his wife, that we're sorry for what had happened, that our family is sorry. I asked for forgiveness again. Forgive us, not only Quinton, but us, because we all is one. That's our family. We didn't mean for that to happen. He didn't mean for it to happen. He was a kid.
He real sorry for what went on. I believe we all are. He's still in there, so I believe he's still, it's still a open wound for him that he have to deal with every day. I believe he's still holding out hope for his mom.
It doesn't matter whether or not they're the victims of society. The end result is they're about to knock my mother on the head with a lead pipe, shoot my sister, beat up my wife, take on my sons. So I don't want to ask, what made them do this. They must be taken off the street.
The history of sentencing for murder in Tennessee is like a lot of places. Most places have a sentence of what's called life. What life means actually is almost never life without the opportunity for getting out. And in Tennessee, like everywhere else in the 70s and 80s and early 90s, that was the case. So we had a life sentence, but you could actually be evaluated for parole after 25 years. In the mid-90s, there was a big movement for what was called truth in sentencing. This idea that people are getting big sentences and the community thinks those big sentences are correct, but then they're actually getting paroled much earlier than people thought. And there was a view that that was not right, that what we wanted to do was to give everyone the real sentence so the community could know they were being punished to the full extent of the law. And this worked both in Tennessee and on the federal level. It had been the case that technically a life sentence was calculated at 60 years, but with credits, you could be released after 25 years. In the mid-90s, the legislature changed that so that a 60-year sentence became a 60-year sentence with only the opportunity for 15% of good time reduction. And one of the big contributors to that was the federal government in the 1994 crime bill provided that if states wanted to continue to receive federal funding for prisons, they had to implement truth in sentencing for certain violent crimes. So in order to continue to get that federal money to build our prisons, we had to turn a 25-year sentence into a 51-year sentence. And that's for juveniles, that's for everyone. The other part of the story is that federal funding dried up after a few years. So we no longer get that money, not that we necessarily want to build more prisons, but the reason we changed our law to make our state available for federal funding has gone away, but the law has continued for another 20 years.
I got pregnant when I was 15. I had Quinton when I was 16. We lived here in Memphis, and I stayed with Quinton's dad and mom. She really didn't have no room for us to live at. We had to make a mat on the floor. I had 3 kids by then. Then we moved to Zeta Garden, and that's where my life and my journey started with my kids. From then on, without having any help.
I grew up in a single-parent home. My mama had 5 children as a whole. I was the oldest one out of all of them. The neighborhood that I grew up in, you had to walk to school, and there was a whole other different set of people, and they used to jump on us or chase us around. We came up just being a part of something different.
It was nothing but single-parent households over here, and that was challenging. And there was so many of us crowded over here that it was tension, and we had no choice. We was fighting every day, fighting each other. There was a lot of more people coming through here. A lot of gangs was coming through here, a lot of different gangs.
It was awful over there. Go to schools, gang there, walking home. Sometimes we walked home from school, gangs there, they follow you, want to fight. One time somebody, they throwing rocks at our bus because of where we stayed and where they stayed. It was kind of hard growing up, but we kept going.
You could be in the wrong place at the wrong time. Gangs, just a lot went on. Well, it made me, I guess, be tougher because I have to defend myself, of course, dealing with this type of environment. You just basically become who you be around.
I remember walking outside in Hillview where we have bullets in front of our door. It was a lot of activities going on that wasn't safe for us.
Quinton, growing up in the neighborhood he grew up in, people want to say, oh, well, he chose to do this or he chose to be in a game. And it's not a choice. It's about survival. It's about that you're going to be in a situation where if you don't go along with what the majority is doing in your neighborhood, you're going to become a target. And not only you, your mother, your sister, your family will become a target. And so as a child, trying to navigate that and understand that and decide what to do, you don't even have like long-term processing developed in your brain at that point. Your instinct, I mean, and it's going to be anybody's instinct, is to survive.
In 1997, we moved in the area of the community, which was Whitehaven. And by Quinton being the only boy, and the oldest boy, I let him go stay with his father in the community out there in Fraser. That's where a lot of connection came in with him being me new people. He wound up getting in trouble.
I was put in a situation where my co-defendant, it was alleged that he had stole some money out the box. I had to go replace the money that was inside the box. So that's how the whole situation occurred.
Probably like 3 days prior to that, we went to the guy that was over everything. At the time, I was 14, about to be 15 years old, and the guy, I would say, late 30s, I'd say. We was very intimidated. Like when we told him, let us, I don't remember exactly where, it was something to the fact like, hold on, let us think about this, or we gonna come back to you on it. And it was like, no, y'all done already thought about y'all in my house. That was y'all decision, y'all going, and it was like the body motion, the slapping the tape, yeah, it was, that's why I said I see why he was the leader of the game, because it was already a gun sitting on the table, but his demeanor, I feared that if I would have continued to say no, I feel like that something bad would have happened in that house that day. So we was like, come on, let's go snatch these clothes. And I'm looking at it like we just gonna go snatch them, it's gonna be over with. Ain't nobody gonna get hurt. But it went like totally opposite. So we grabbed the clothes, lady said, no. Everybody dropped. Everybody dropped everything in their hand. Like everybody just dropped and ran out the store. We got in the car. I just remember we was driving and I woke up in the hospital.
You know, when I read Quinton's story, I really lean back on that whole notion that he was groomed, right? He was beat up, he was traumatized. He felt like he had no way out of his situation but to do this dire action. Instead of us understanding or trying to understand or thinking about it or looking at the big picture, it's easier to lock him away. It's easier to forget that there's a problem or to blame him for the problem instead of looking at ourselves as a community, as a society.
I woke up at the hospital and my family, they was standing around and everybody was crying and like, what's going on? Like, thought I just had been in a bad wreck. Didn't know someone had lost their life. And that's when they told me the officer lost his life. Like, it was the worst day. Like, I never want to relive a day like that. I can still feel bad that even be a part of somebody losing their life. Like, and then when I found out his wife was pregnant, like, I'm a father. And I never want to get took away from my child. Like, it was the worst day of my life, ever.
It was a devastating moment to me, you know, because of the accident and what had happened and, you know, about police being involved. When they tested Quinton for his IQ, they said he was like mild retarded. But when they tested him in the court with the court doctors and stuff, they were saying that they didn't see anything wrong with him. But it was something wrong with him, you know, before he even got incarcerated. But they didn't take that into consideration, what the doctor had already diagnosed him from being mild retardation from the Social Security office.
So Quinton was the first time I learned about how harsh juveniles are punished in Tennessee. Him being a child at that time. And in this country, you know, you tell children you can't smoke until you're 18. You're not responsible enough to make that decision. Or you can't drive until you're 16. You can't drink until you're 21. You're not responsible enough. You haven't developed enough to do that responsibly. You can just throw children away for life and not give them the opportunity to get the help or whatever they need to, you know, give them a chance at redemption.
There is a lot of talk of criminal justice reform in Tennessee, even from the right, but there hasn't been much actual reform. We're still stuck kind of in the patterns of over-criminalization and over-incarceration. The one thing that is very different that ties into juveniles is in Tennessee, a juvenile who is accused of murder, which in Tennessee can include a juvenile accused of felony murder, meaning they have committed a felony that's resulted in death, but there's no allegation that they intended that person to die. They can be transferred to adult court. They can be tried and convicted as an adult. And the minimum sentence that anyone, including a juvenile convicted of first-degree or felony murder in Tennessee, is a 60-year sentence, which can be reduced down to 51 years, meaning they will spend at least 51 years in prison. And based on our research, that makes Tennessee a complete outlier in that almost every other state provides for juveniles in that situation to be reviewed for possible parole after 15, 20, 25 years. The absolute other worst jurisdictions in the country would have a juvenile in that situation with a minimum of no more than 40 years. So we're at least a decade more punitive in the situation of a juvenile convicted of felony murder.
The day of the trial, when I realized he was facing a life sentence, you know, that really hurted me, you know. For them, you know, I didn't understand what that mean either. He got to do 51 years before he even make parole, and he might not get parole. It was hard for me, you know, to accepting that, you know, going to work, coming home, you know, crying every night, you know, because I didn't understand, you know, to see my only son, you know, in a position like this right here. I was really hurt, you know, and I still am.
You know, Quinton Sanders be charged as an adult. They didn't know if he was gonna be charged as an adult. As a juvenile, they don't know. It was basically left up to the courts. And I was like, he just a kid. You know, you can't treat a kid like an adult. Cause we still growing, he still got so much to do. So when they came back, like they tried him as an adult, I mean, it's just like, yo, it just takes something out of you. And so you be like, he's, you know, in your mind, he's just a kid. He's a kid. It's a mistake. He never got in no trouble. First time getting in trouble, and you charge him as an adult. This is the part I still doesn't get right to today. First time. Everybody that got charged with it, they out. It hurted me to see him like that. So, you know, I'd be like, I don't want to go, but I'm going because it's my brother. I have to support, but I don't want to see him behind bars. Even when his niece and them grow up, they have to see him behind bars. It hurts. It really do. It hurts. But I think, you know, we comfort each other and just, you know, everything will be all right. He coming home. They still let mine go. He's coming home. He's coming home.
One of the arguments that prosecutors put forth is that these sentences are necessary. There are people in our community who do think there is a meaningful difference between you're never getting out versus you might have a chance to get out after 51 years. Even though statistics strongly suggest that life in prison greatly reduces life expectancy. So for a 16 or 17-year-old to go into prison, the odds of them surviving until they're 68 or 67 are very low. In our research, we have not found anyone who has ever survived 51 straight years in prison in Tennessee. And so really that seems to us to be a complete distinction without a difference.
So I'm prone to die in prison. It doesn't matter how good your health is in here. The history shows that you say that I might have a chance, but no one had ever lived 51 years in Tennessee prison.
Since the incident, it affected the family so much because we really didn't understand at the moment, like, how an accident could give somebody so many years to say, like, you're going to be gone for 60 years, like, and every day it really aches at my mom's, and that's where I really see a lot of the pain coming in when I have to look at her, knowing like she's never gonna see her son free after accident. She's faced a whole lot of health issues herself, like she's legally blind in one of her eyes, her diabetics, and her blood pressure has gone skyrocket.
Deep down inside, is there hope? But I know it's hope. And I know I have faith that he coming home. But seeing Quinton grow up behind bars and stuff, when he first got incarcerated and went to juvenile and stuff, they bound him over as an adult. Seeing him growing up in there, crying when they maced him, nothing, couldn't do nothing, don't know what to do. Lawyers take your money and stuff and, still don't give you any hope, just take your money and they gone on. It's been hard on us, as a family. By me children seeing what I'm going through, my other children seeing what I'm going through.
The law right now in places like Tennessee says that we can look at a juvenile who has made a mistake and we can say they're never going to be anything in their life. And we can give up on them, we can lock them up and throw away the key. And that's, as a society, we either have to admit that admit that that's what we're doing, or we need to change, because that's not what we claim to believe. It's not what the science says, and that's not what our values are. The second thing is, even if for some reason you believed that these harsh sentences are somehow necessary to keep our society safe, the public has to understand those sentences are not being handed out in a fair way.
Can anybody hear me? Hear me calling. Can anybody hear me? I'm calling out for help. I'm calling out. Lord, I need your help.
Well, I think the criminal justice system in Tennessee is ripe for reform. Whether you look at sentencing for juveniles or the adult population, it is due for an overhaul. Well, I think Tennessee is still relying on antiquated legislation that was passed in the era of the crime bill, the super predator era, where we are taking those who commit crimes as really children and keeping them in prison until they pass away. These crime bill era pieces of legislation don't make things better. It's not reducing the offense rate, and it's not a deterrent, as people will say. And it's really, you're moving way too far into punitive as opposed to a system that's supposed to rehabilitate. And I think that's really the overcorrection that was made with the crime bill and all the pieces of legislation that the state of Tennessee passed at that time. And so I'm hoping that we can shift the narrative.
He missed out on a lot of our birthdays. He missed out the birth of my nieces and nephews, seeing them grow up. We ain't getting no younger. He ain't getting no younger. The death of my nephews, the death of my father, like the death of my sister.
Well, that was the hardest thing I think I could have told him about his sister, that she had passed. She had got hit by a car. Her and Audrey, both of them, the car hit both of them. Broke his sister Audrey's femur bone, but Shaquita died during the accident. The lady left the scene, and she said she thought she hit a dog, but she came back. I have to forgive her in order to be forgiven. I don't know, the lady from this day, but I know she didn't get no time. It made me feel like the system is just unjust and unfair, And I didn't understand how did Quinton get a life sentence, 51 years, a life sentence for an accident, you know. It wasn't intentional, versus the lady who killed my daughter that hit her and left the scene, you know, just only get probation. So that's another hurt that I'm living with right now, of not understanding how did this happen within the system.
My name is Clemmy Greenlee. I'm the founder of Nashville Peacemaker, Stop the Violence, Enough is Enough. I live in Nashville, Tennessee. I had a friend of mine that's been locked up for 12 years. And so when he called me this last time, he was like, Auntie Clem, I need you to talk to this guy. You know, he done got in some trouble. His time ain't worth what he done, and he remorseful, he didn't mean it. I'm like, oh, I can't take on another case. And when I said the word case, I heard another voice say, hello? Within 10 minutes of just hearing him, didn't hear nothing about the case, just hearing him, I was melted. I was already melted. And I was like, I'm reaching on here, grabbing a notebook and a pencil. What can I do? How can I fit in? Nashville Peacemaker's been around since 2001, trying to find a loophole in why the violence is already happening out here, because I started seeing young kids running around with guns. In 2003, my son was gunned down in the street, shot in the back of the head. Had something to do with a territory, who should be on this turf and who shouldn't be, and I didn't understand that. Once that happened to me, as I was already trying to talk about the violence out here, it made me jump full force into finding out what's really going on. I've worked with some young people for so long. When I talked about my son getting murdered, even though I was mad at that young man, I wasn't talking about no 51 years. I wasn't even talking about life. I said, give him 5 years, let him out so he can come wash my car, help me with my rent, you know, call me for Mother's Day or whatever. You can't show up for church every Sunday. You just can't. And say you're a believer, and then go back home and say, I'm so glad he got 50 years. I hope he right in hell. You just defeated whatever you just left in that church building. You search your own heart and your own soul. I'm going to talk to the man who killed my son. I'm going to help the man who killed my son, because I have to do this. And he don't deserve not to be there for his kids because of the mistake he made on mine. So I can't let no kid go spend the rest of their life in prison, jail, or juvenile, and they don't even know what the hell they just did.
The important thing to keep in mind when you talk to the families of victims is that there has to be a balance, right? We want to rehabilitate someone, not just punish them for a crime. And so putting someone in jail for the rest of their lives or having these unjust laws is not necessarily something that's going to benefit that family or benefit society.
My name is Dawn Harrington. I'm from Nashville, Tennessee. Free Hearts is an organization that's led by formerly incarcerated women that provides support, education, advocacy, and organizes family impacted by incarceration. Our ultimate goals are reuniting families and strengthening communities. We got involved with people from our organization that have done decades, and they were incarcerated as youth, and they have 51 years life. You know, we know that people don't survive those sentences. You know, 51 years before you're eligible for parole with inadequate medical care, with, you know, all of the abuse and violence that's going on from the system on the inside, to give that type of a sentence to a child whose brain is not even developed yet, it is a cruel and unusual punishment. As a society, we don't care. We have to become humans again. I do have hope for our state. You know, I'm gonna keep holding on to hope.
I want to see the 51-year law go away. I want it to go back down to 15 years so that these children have the chance to form into an adult and be able to exit and join society and live and have go to school and go to college and have families instead of just wasting away inside of the system. That's not helping them. It's not helping us. Also, I really want folks to rethink how juveniles are sentenced anyway.
How, especially here in the so-called Bible Belt, we don't see the redemption credit in people is beyond me.
We profess to have a strong belief in the potential of people to change and grow. That's central to a lot of people's religious faith, is that just because you make a mistake on one occasion doesn't mean that you can't learn from that and change and become a great member of your community. And that principle, I think, is completely violated by how we are dealing with children in these juvenile life sentences.
The situation that I got myself in when I was 17 years old, I can never forget that moment. I took the advice of the police officer sister. She told me, like, while I'm in prison, I need to educate myself so that one day that I'm released, that I could be beneficial to society. I used to skip school and class, and I end up causing someone to lose their life. When I got incarcerated, I went to school every day until I got my GED. And once I got my GED, then I went to start taking vocational classes, as well as I took college courses. I also learned how to carve, masonry, learn how to build houses, as well as electricity. We make face masks and gowns for the first responders. I used to work double shift, like 16 hours a day, 7 days a week. I was convicted of taking someone's life. I worked hard to try to help save someone's life. That was my purpose. I mentor to the youth through the Don't Follow Me program, because I try to tell the children, man, one mistake can cost you your life, and like it cost me mine. Trying to make my amends with society, show that I'm sorry for what I did, and I'm trying to, man, rebuild from that, because I'm asking for forgiveness and asking them folks to have mercy on me. Today, I try to make myself a better man and be productive. Because I know Mr. Overton was there helping people out there in society, so I'm trying my best to do something to help people in society too.
Because he all about the youth, like that's his whole focus. Just trying to, just veer the youth in the right direction, because he a living testimony. It happened to him. And it hurt him, and it hurt him deep, because he ain't had a chance to, really, live his life.
Like he said, there's a lot of things go on behind bars that we don't know. Any program coming up, he's taking it to keep his mind going instead of, on foolishness. And I'm proud of him. I'm proud, real proud.
It says a lot about my brother having certificates. It says a lot. I'm tell you, I feel my mom proud of her because I ain't never told her. But when I found that, like, the certificates my brother was getting in jail, that would motivate me to go get my high school diploma. Because at first I was going to be like, okay, whatever. But when she started telling what Bo was doing in there, I'm like, oh, I can do it too.
He works hard. He wants to do good. It's not something that changes for him. This is who he is. What I can say, and we've talked about this, is he's like, I stay busy. I want to stay busy because I don't want to get caught up into all the stuff that's going on in here. But it's intentional for him. He knows that, even inside, that you can get caught up in some things that will take you away from the path that he's trying to walk.
It's a lesson learned in how humble he is, in the type of person that he has become from the inside, from his spirituality and from his mental, for what he have endured. I don't have to worry about him doing nothing wrong.
He paid his debt, and he gonna continue to contribute to society. You know what I'm saying? They give him the chance. I know what he gonna do, because he's doing it now. He's doing it from in there. And it's hard to be positive and not distracted in there. Especially a whole 20 years, like he consistent.
I love you, son, and I always will. And you just keep doing what you're doing to making yourself become a better person who you are. And don't stop for nobody, no matter what the situation is. I will always love you and always love yourself, and keep your head up and stay strong.